Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. The topic of this 10-minute moan is John Swinney and his seems to appear lack of trust in anybody in Scotland that's not SNP. Now, this is based on the STV debate that happened last night live. I was travelling back from Perth last night as the debate was taking place, so I didn't see it, but I watched it in full this morning. And a couple of things that John Swinney said that I was like, yeah, quite worrying for me was actually three things. The line that he takes that we must, as Scottish people, vote SNP to get rid of the Tories, totally bollocks. You need to send SNP MPs down there to talk on behalf of Scotland, and his inability to give a straight answer about oil and gas. And that's what I want to discuss in this 10-minute moan. So the first thing is this thing that just baffles. I'm quite a logical, common sense thinker, I like to believe. And I have a grasp on things like simple arithmetic. And he keeps spouting this line, which Sarwar challenged him on, that we must vote for SNP to remove the Tory government. You're like, well, why would you? If that's your driver at this election, then you would the natural, obvious thing would be to vote for Labour, because Labour have got by far the best, if not already a shoe-in, chance of removing the said Tory government from Westminster. So if you want to tactically vote purely on that one topic, then you would be advocating people to vote Labour, because that's who'll depose them. So that's the first point. The second point that I take exception to is this drivel that we must send SNP MPs down so Scotland's got a voice. So there's actually a couple of things inside that way of thinking. One is that it's only SNP MPs that would give Scotland a voice, which I totally disagree with, and that voice has got to be driven by the SNP. And that's total bollocks. That's the thinking of someone who wants like a one-party state type thing, where it's their way or no way. And I think it's very disingenuous to those in Scotland who don't really like SNP, particularly other politicians, because any politician based in Scotland, is representing the constituents of their area. So by pure default, they're going to be down there talking on behalf of the Scottish people and their constituents. But this is a scary narrative that just concerns me, that that people buy into this nonsense that it's only Scottish people, only SNP that are allowed or should be allowed to go down to Westminster and talk on behalf of Scotland. Now, I can't remember what election it was, but there was one election where they almost won all the Scottish seats, right? They got like loads, right? I think it was not long after the referendum. And I remember the photograph outside Westminster, and was it Scotland's Roar or something? They added some tagline onto it, and they had obviously a length of time with almost all the benches, the Scottish benches, taken up by SNP politicians. And what did they achieve? They've not even been able to achieve another referendum that they keep telling the nationalists in Scotland that they're there to get, and that's one of the. I genuinely think, if I was a nationalist, I would have well by now given up the stories that the SNP drive that they're going to somehow get me independence as a nationalist. So if I was a nationalist, I'd struggle to have any faith left in them, and I'd be looking elsewhere, because they have failed. Even when they had almost every Scottish seat in Westminster, they failed. Even when they had a majority government in Scotland, they failed to achieve what they've been telling us for 17 years they're going to do. 90 years actually, that's the whole time they've been in a party. But the 17 years that they've controlled the Scottish government, they've been selling the dream to nationalists that they're going to achieve independence. And that will need to be via some sort of referendum. So they've had that in the past when they had almost every Scottish seat and failed to deliver on what they're set out to do. And I'm not comfortable with this narrative that it's only Scottish SNPs or Scottish National Party MPs that can talk for Scotland, when we know that over half the population don't want independence because we voted that way. And there's not a poll yet that's shown that I'll rephrase that. There's not an unpaid poll that suggests that Scots are in the majority of Scots want independence. So it doesn't matter who the leader is. There's this expectation by the SNP that it's their way or no way, and I'm fed up with that. And I'm quite sure any level-minded nationalist is fed up with that. And I'll reiterate what I've said before. I believe the SNP have harmed the national independence movement, more than they've aided it, particularly over the last 10 years. The last SNP leader I've seen that had any impact towards independence was Alex Salmond all the years ago when he was a leader of the SNP. And since then, they've all said it because they need to say it. It's like, I'm an SNP leader, I must say independence every other syllable. But there's nothing behind it. And right now, they have no route to achieving independence. They've no plan. And I'm disappointed he wasn't challenged on it during the debate, because I think it's a big chink in their armour that this independence wishing party that tell everybody to vote for them and we'll get Braveheart to become a reality. That's what they sell, and they've actually no plan in place that can deliver that. But nationalists still vote for them. But back that up. I speak to men, and amazing the amount of nationalists I've been speaking to over the last maybe month, 6 weeks, particularly since the election was called over the last fortnight, that agree with me in a lot of things that I say about the SNP because they're sick of it. And actually, I've got a bit of empathy for these people. I don't want independence. I'm quite happy with the status quo we have constitutionally, but I don't particularly want to end people's thoughts that are that way inclined. I think it's healthy that we have debate, and I'm quite confident that that what I want out of that debate will remain that we're part of the United Kingdom. I can't see any set of circumstances that would jeopardise that. But I'm not wanting folk that want independence, that just fancy it as an alternative to bugger off and start a commune in Arran or anything like that, right? I'm not that radical. Quite happy to accept people having different opinions. And these people, not the radical ones, they'd crack me up, right? See the total cult that... this is fantastic, right? I actually seen a guy on Twitter trying to have a debate with me that I thought, I'm wasting my time here, that tried to say that there was no £600,000 missing out of the SNP accounts. Which, I'm like, are we not past that? If that was true, right, I'm quite sure 3 people that are arrested last year would have turned up at a police station with either a lawyer and a piece of paper, or themselves just with a piece of paper. It would be the easiest defence in the world, someone accused of embezzling money, to say, well, it's not embezzled, because it's there. The fact that hasn't happened, and we're now in a position where one man has been charged and the report sent to the prosecution office. Quite happy to accept the £600,000 missing, right? But that's how mental some of these nationalists are, the proper cult ones, not the normal ones that just fancy being Scotland being a country itself. I don't have a problem with that. But the proper nutty ones, right, that believe that sort of shit, I've got a severe problem with them. They actually shouldn't be allowed to vote, right, because you're so warped. There's a statement for you, right? So, but the normal ones, right, I kind of like, they must be now, I know some of them have because I've spoken to them, that SNP have ruined the dreams of independence. So we've to accept Swinney's words that the people who are telling, have sold the lie, are the only people that are allowed to go down to Westminster and represent us. And this narrative of it's the only way to stop a Tory government. And then on this debate, actually said, I'm trying to remember his exact words so I can vote verbatim, but it was along the lines of it's going to be a shoe-in or a walk-in or whatever for, Stammer will be the next Prime Minister. So therefore he's already saying, well, it doesn't really matter how Scotland votes because they're going to begin anyway, yet demanding to help get rid of the Tories, we've got to vote SNP. The whole thing just doesn't make sense. He's just saying words with nothing to back it up. And I can't think, if I might be wrong, right? I'm perfectly able to accept that I'm not knowledgeable at every single aspect of life, but what I'm about to say might be able to be, I'd love to see examples of it, but show me, even back in the day when they had almost every seat in Westminster, what did they achieve? And another thing that beggars belief is this total inability to respond to anything about oil and gas. He was asked numerous times, I think it was Douglas Ross, look, do you support oil and gas or no? Basically, that's what he was saying to him. And he wouldn't give him a straight yes or no answer. And that beggars belief, because I think they know fine well if they come out and definitely said, as a party and as a government, we support oil and gas, and we're not anti-looking or against looking at potentially new oil fields and that sort of stuff. The Greens would be shouting for a vote of no confidence immediately, which could then lose the government power, and we would be looking at an election in Holyrood before the 2 years was up, that they could still be in charge. I'd love that. And I think they're well aware that if they actually said anything, so that proves to me that they must be happy to continue oil and gas, which is fine. That's an acceptable viewpoint from me. But if they say it, the Greens then say, that's it, finished, vote of no confidence, whole thing's up in the slates, and we could be looking at an election before the year's out in Holyrood. So I'm not stupid enough to understand how that bit of politics works, right? I get that. But they should just be hammered on two questions. What's your route to independence? And just say yes or no. Do you believe oil and gas has got a future? Because if they tell us the truth on both of those questions, they're finished. Right? Because even the nationalists that still buy into their shite would be like, well, what's the point in voting for you? And the Greens would stop any support whatsoever, where, that's already questioning a few points in Holyrood since the fallout of the Butte House Agreement. But it would just nail in the coffin for it. Absolutely nail in the coffin. If they actually put their hands up and said, look, and Stephen Flynn's trying to do it because he's just looking after his own backside and trying to keep his job in Westminster. And he's obviously constituency is Aberdeen, heavily involved oil and gas, right? So he's trying to suggest that, but he's the only voice I can hear in the SNP that's trying to suggest that oil and gas aren't bad. And the party, I think the party must be similar thinking to Flynn, or they would just come out and condemn it. But they don't, because they know the repercussions. And it's not all voters, that one, by the way. I don't think many voters are totally anti, apart from, obviously the Green Party tree hugging environmentalists. I understand why they would be against it, but normal SNP voters, I don't think would be turned off. If they turned around and said, no, we want to continue investing in oil and gas and maybe look at new oil fields, I don't think they would lose that many of their normal voters. But they could be out of government and on their arse pretty damn quick if they were to admit that. So there we go. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up, please. If you've not already done so, please subscribe if you've not done so before. And most importantly of all, unless you're John Swinney, his SNP government, or the remaining of the crackpot cult, everybody else have a great day. Cheery bye now.